Today's NFL Daily is made possible by our friends over at Magic Spoon. You can get $5 off your first order of this healthy and delicious cereal when you go to magicspoon.com/chat. It is the perfect blend, folks, of tasty cereal that's also incredibly healthy for you. So check the comment section and the description. That link is in there for you guys today. Let's talk injury news here. We won't spend too much time on this first one. Pretty straightforward. Raheem Mostert is headed to IR. He is set to miss about 8 weeks. He has chipped some knee cartilage, which sounds incredibly painful, in his knee. That doesn't sound comfortable whatsoever. It is another tough break for the talented, but frankly often banged up in some capacity running back. The Niners surprised many when they did not have Trey Sermon active in week 1. Instead, it was the other running back that they drafted, Elijah Mitchell out of Louisiana, who had 19 carries for 104 yards and 1 score. I suspect that Mitchell is going to be the number 1 waiver wire claim across all of fantasy football. If you want to dial it back to our NFL draft coverage, you wouldn't have been that surprised. My literal line pre-draft for Elijah Mitchell, not going to be a workhorse back. Put him in a Shanahan scheme, he's going to produce great. Look exactly what happened in week 1. All right, more injuries here. Ryan Fitzpatrick. This one is maybe even more impactful than the Raheem Mostert one. He suffered a hip subluxation, which sounds incredibly painful and probably is. The somewhat good news here for Fitzpatrick and Washington is that although he's going to go on IR, the injury for now is not expected to be season-ending. But this is still a significant and major loss for Washington at the quarterback position. Fitzpatrick was supposed to be the one who got them back to the NFC East. They made the offense better than what it was last year. In the meantime, his replacement, Taylor Heineke, who impressed at points, by the way, in the playoffs in particular for Washington. Week 1, 11-15, 122, 1 score. Wasn't bad, a bit of a tricky situation. Offers plenty of mobility, but the buzz out there already is, well, now Washington lost their starter. Could Cam Newton head to D.C., reunite with Ron Rivera? The backup right now for Heineke is Kyle Allen, who we know is not as good as Cam Newton. Now, Newton, as we've mentioned many a time, is still a free agent. He knows that Washington football team staff well from their time together in Carolina. But especially now, this next point matters, especially for a coach like Ron Rivera, who's made a big deal about getting his players vaccinated, at least trying to get them vaccinated. Newton is not vaccinated. That is an issue for NFL teams. That is a major problem. If Newton does not get vaccinated, he is stuck with this. He is in a 5-game waiting period. Or 5 days, excuse me. He has to wait those days before he can be signed to the active roster. By that time, it's a little late. He's not going to make the impact you want. So that vaccination status is a big deal for Washington and for Newton moving forward. Now, Newton was not good last year. There's really no way around that. Way too many mistakes. Was not the same coming back from his initial bout with COVID-19, mind you. Bad TD interception ratio. Still a good runner. Is still unquestionably one of the top 60 quarterbacks in the NFL. But we know what, I'll just chalk it up to politics in the end, which is a nice vague way of me saying more than on-the-field stuff. That's in play here. So I don't know what will end up happening here with Cam Newton. But what do you guys think? Will Washington end up signing Cam Newton? Get your votes in for me in the comment section. You can type in Y for yes or type in N for no. This is the pinned comment on today's video. So if you get the ad break here on YouTube, scroll on down and get your votes in. Let's talk Deshaun Watson now, the Houston Texans' former franchise quarterback. Guess what popped up again on Sunday? As the NFL Network and ESPN did their Sunday usual of dropping some news. Well, the trade talks could heat up closer to the NFL trade deadline, says Ian Rappaport, which is literally not new. I am unsurprised, but also kind of disappointed to bring this up again. There's no new information that was mentioned by him. His report was, well, if the quarterbacks play bad for these 4 teams, the 4 teams previously linked to Deshaun Watson, maybe they changed their mind at the trade deadline. Well, guess what happened? Miami, Philadelphia, Carolina, and Denver all won week 1 and all saw enough promise out of their franchise quarterback, or at least their current quarterback, I should say, probably more so for Bridgewater than others, to not justify an immediate move for Deshaun Watson. Again, I don't think anything has changed in the past several weeks to months around Deshaun Watson. Let's acknowledge this is an all-time weird situation. You've got a franchise quarterback in the prime of his NFL career, still young, coming off a great season individually. His team was garbage. It happens. Who is not playing and is a healthy scratch because, in part, the Texans don't want to get hurt and tank his own trade value. There's the multiple state and federal investigations into whether or not Deshaun Watson committed a bunch of heinous acts and might go to jail. And he's sitting there as a healthy scratch each week. Why he's not on the commissioner's exempt list, I'm not really sure. But it is a wild situation. And it's weird to just see it kind of be like, yep, that's what we're doing, and not really get called out that often. It's highly unusual, especially if you've watched the NFL go through other sexual assault and domestic violence incidents in the past. The handling of Deshaun Watson, straight up weird. Because in general, if a player was coming off this caliber of season, what Deshaun Watson did in 2020, that player is going to command a haul, and yet he's not, because we literally don't know if he's going to end up going to jail or not, or if he's innocent or not. It's such an unusual and wild situation. But I will give Houston a lot of credit here. Did not impact them. Tyrod Taylor came out and played great. Now, the Jags are bad, which maybe shouldn't be a huge surprise, but still, let's give Tyrod Taylor credit where it's due. 21 of 33, 291 yards, 2 touchdowns. I was highly impressed with the play and performance out of Tyrod Taylor, and it helps mitigate the awkward situation involving Deshaun Watson, which quite simply is not really going to go away, I don't think, anytime in the near future. But I do want you guys to give me your best guess. I think the number's low here in terms of the percent chance that the Houston Texans trade away Deshaun Watson. Get your votes in for me right now in the comments section. As mentioned, today's show is made possible by our good friends over at Magic Spoon. Get $5 off your first order when you go to magicspoon.com/chat. That link, by the way, will be in the comments section and in the description. It's high in protein, folks. 13 or 14, depending on which version you're using, which cereal. The peanut butter one, a bit higher in protein. That checks out, right? 13 or 14 in every bowl. 4 grams of net carbs. That is it. Profoundly low. And despite having 0 sugar, man, this stuff tastes just like the sugary, unhealthy cereal that we all grew up with. So go get $5 off your first order at magicspoon.com/chat. Tons of flavors. I am a peanut butter fiend myself. I recommend that one. If you like chocolate, they've got the cocoa, fruity, and frosted. 2 different flavors. Can't go wrong there either. So go check them out. magicspoon.com/chat. That's it. Lamar Jackson set to play Week 1 of Monday Night Football against the Baltimore Ravens. Where do things stand with his contract negotiations? In the end, not a lot of updates here. ESPN dropped this today that negotiations are taking a bit of a back seat because Lamar Jackson is his own agent, which is also stuff that we knew going in. It does, however, add some complexity is the word I'll use there for the contract talks, because Lamar Jackson is going to want the Josh Allen deal. But guess what? That's $43 million per year. There is a way in which the Ravens can get to that figure, and frankly, if you believe in Lamar Jackson as your franchise quarterback, you pay that, because what's Baker Mayfield going to command? What is Russell Wilson going to command probably this time next year? Hell, what is Aaron Rodgers going to be asking for? Other young quarterbacks are all due to get paid. So I think the benchmark for Lamar Jackson right now probably is the Josh Allen deal. Now, maybe you get lucky and you get him to come in under. If you do, that's a big win for the Ravens. But the newest guy always gets paid the most, especially when that guy's already won an MVP. So get your votes in. Over or under $43.1 million per year for Lamar Jackson. O for over or U for under. Beyond just the per year figure, the one that I'm watching is the guaranteed. We've seen this in the past, that players who operate as their own agent, sometimes, not all the time, end up in a situation where their guaranteed money comes in less. I would wonder if the guaranteed number for for Lamar Jackson does not hit the Josh Allen figure. Maybe it's under $150 million, and that gives the Ravens some wiggle room and still get Lamar Jackson a pretty big contract. Lamar last year, again, 2,700 plus passing yards, over 1,000 yards on the ground. He showed once again that he is a franchise quarterback. He wasn't as good as 2019, but that level of production is still really damn good. So if I'm the Ravens, I'm trying to get that deal done. I think it is complicated by the fact that he's his own agent. You can ask NFL teams, they'll tell you honestly, they'd rather have an agent because sometimes those negotiations aren't always smooth. Just ask Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. Could be an issue for the Ravens, one worth monitoring throughout the season. Now, if you guys want to subscribe for the best NFL videos on YouTube, then do it. Chat Sports is the right place. Videos every single day. Sometimes it's news, rumors, it's some of our mailbags. Everything is covered here at Chat Sports, so subscribe for free right now. Let's talk Saints injury news now. Not as bad as it could have been. Marcus Davenport suffered a pectoral injury later in the game in Week 1. A very impressive performance, mind you, out of the Saints in their win over the Green Bay Packers. The good news for Davenport, it is only a strain, not a, emphasis on this next word, full-fledged tear. Technically a strain is a tear, but it's not like a complete torn pectoral. That is good news. A torn pec might have ended Marcus Davenport's season. In this case, with only being a strain, he should be back sooner than later, which is a very big deal for New Orleans. The Saints, frankly, avoided some disaster here. Had Davenport gone down, that would have been a big-time loss for the Saints defensive line. I was very impressed by Marcus Davenport in Week 1. I had thought this was finally going to be the breakout year, and we saw the flashes of it in Week 1 against Green Bay. 3 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack, and a quarterback hit. Now, obviously, Davenport was never going to produce that level every single week. But his play was one of the many promising signs out of New Orleans in Week 1. Now, in the short term, assuming Davenport does miss at least a little bit of time, I think Carl Granderson and Thano Passanio are the next men up at defensive end. We'll get to Peyton Turner here in just a second. But the injury to Davenport is a big one. They were kind of thin on the interior defensive line because David Onyemata suspended. Cam Jordan's great. I thought Passanio and Granderson showed enough promise. With it being a short-term injury to Marcus Davenport, I think that really helps the Saints be in a position where they'll be able to survive, maybe not thrive in the same way, but survive until he's back closer to 100%. Now, the Saints could also get a boost from Peyton Turner. Now, I know Saints fans know this already, but Turner missed some time in camp in the preseason. He was inactive in Week 1. He had missed some practice with an injury, was still getting back to 100%. I wonder now if Turner ends up being active in Week 1. Or in Week 2. He was inactive in Week 1. I think I would gamble here early in the week for Week 2 that Turner is able to play in the second game of the NFL season. They also, of course, lost Marshon Lattimore. That injury viewed to be more of a week-to-week one, so we'll see what ends up happening for Marshon Lattimore in terms of when he's able to make his return to the Saints. Of course, he got the bag in a big-time way right after that game ended as well, so decent timing there for Marshon. Now, there were several major injuries across the NFL, both for the Saints and other NFL teams. So what do you guys think? Who had the biggest, I'll go with most impactful, Week 1 injury? What player got hurt that you just went, damn, that really, really sucks? Get your votes in for me right now in the comments section. The New York Jets, unfortunately, continue to have some fairly significant injuries this year. I guess the bad injury luck from San Francisco has followed head coach Robert Saleh to New York. Mekhi Becton, also not the end of the world, but not ideal, is set to miss 4 to 6 weeks with a knee injury. He needs arthroscopic knee surgery to help repair what was partially a subluxation, just like Ryan Fitzpatrick had, and an MCL sprain. Not exactly a comfortable injury as Becton kind of got rolled back up as a different, the player falling in the back of his knees. Could have been a lot worse. Becton will go on IR, can return after 3 weeks. It'll end up being the longer version of it from that perspective. But that is a big-time loss, at least short-term, for the New York Jets. Becton, still young, has looked like one of the better young left tackles in the NFL. He was very impressive, a bit inconsistent in his first season, but as big as he is, athletic as he is for his size, he's a big piece on this still rather young Jets offensive line. Now, in the short term, the Jets tackles will be George Fant and Morgan Moses. Surprising me, and I think many others out there, George Fant actually got the start at right tackle over Morgan Moses in week 1. I had thought it was going to be flipped. I was wrong from that perspective. Now, Fant has played both left and right tackle. He's definitely the right guy to throw in on the left side of the offensive line. So that makes some more sense. I do think Moses, by the way, including the run game, did outplay Fant more so than Moses outplayed Fant, excuse me. So that's a pretty big note. At least the Jets have a decent backup OT. Lots of teams do not in the NFL. So how many games then, folks, will the New York Football Jets win this season? They kind of rallied late against the Carolina Panthers, but that defense has really lost some significant key pieces. So get your votes in. How many games will the Jets win this year? Let's hit now the other key injury for New York, LaMarcus Joyner, as he suffered a torn triceps. Joyner will need surgery. He is out for the year. Yet another brutal defensive loss here for the Jets, as Joyner was a starting safety for this team. One of their other top safeties is already on IR. They lost Carl Lawson. Their secondary in general was not that talented. This is a big-time loss for New York. With Joyner, who is hurt for now and is going to end up going here on IR, the Jets are in a unique spot at safety. Ashton Davis and Sherrod Niesman are going to head, or are on IR. Now, both players can return at some point later on this season. Now, Davis hopefully comes back. I think that's the guy that the Jets would like to have out there, given his previous draft capital invested there. Adrian Colbert and Sheldrick Redwine played after the LaMarcus Joyner injury. Quite frankly, neither of them played that great. Colbert, who has bounced around the NFL, has maybe has a little bit more experience than Sheldrick Redwine, although I will make note that Redwine was a higher investment of the Browns, admittedly, but a higher investment draft capital-wise. So it has been a unfortunate rash of injuries for the New York Jets, and we'll see what ends up happening going forward for them from an injury perspective. Hopefully it dies down at some point soon.